Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Jason P. Crawford, introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? I'm Jason. I write science fiction and fantasy. Like our host said, I'm a veteran. Was in the Army for 8 years doing linguist things that I'm not allowed to talk about for another 4 decades. And yeah, it's great to see you.
Well, since you mentioned the Army off the bat, because that was in the pre-show, we'll go ahead and do those questions first. So obviously you served in the military. Do you feel like your time in the Army affects the way you tell stories?
Oh, that's a good question. Does it affect? I think it affects the breadth of experience that I have, and the different things that I can speak to before I have to start digging into the annals of the internet for research. I don't think it had a very strong effect on the storytelling technique.
I know I can generally tell someone that's a city folk that's never been out in nature, when they talk about how silent and peaceful it is. I'm like, generally when nature is silent, that means there's a predator about to eat you.
You're about to die. Something's going to get you.
That's when you hear the music, Dumb Ways to Die.
Right.
But yeah, so it's if nothing else, you appreciate just how dirty and gritty real life can be when you're away from civilization.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like I said, I've seen some writing where it's just so clean. And
I mean, hey, I'd like to live in that world. I'm not going to
absolutely
as a reader, but it's like, are you sure? Like, really?
And you could get that just having camped as a Boy Scout in your youth. Like I totally learned that from scouting. But like, if nothing else, just sitting around a campfire, that smoke smell will stay in your clothes for a while. Now, factor in they're wearing wool or linen or linsey woolsey or any of those other less synthetic materials, and it gets even worse. I mean, they're going to carry that campfire around for weeks.
I guess it's just more of the that they must be using the role playing experience. It's like, yes, this happens. Do we want to talk about it? Like, is that where we want to go? Do we want to deal with that, or can we just? They're used to it. It's fine. Type of
I think there's definitely a fine line between details that don't matter and the kind of visceral details that hook you into a setting.
And I think it's reader dependent too. Like for some people, it doesn't matter as much.
There's some people that like me that want all the description. Like, tell me what the grass looks like. Even I'm here for it. And other people are like, I don't even want to know what the characters look like.
Right.
I really don't understand it. Like when there's the books that you read, and you'll read it a dozen times, and every time you get something different out of it. And then there are other books that's just like your shameless bubblegum pop read of the summer, and you couldn't even tell me what the characters look like at the end, but you had fun reading it, and that's cool. Like they're divergent markets, but they're both valid. I just prefer a lot more detail. So for me, those things are ways you can hook it, right?
Sure.
Like describing the sense or the nature or something.
But
that's one of the things I learned in Iraq is how much of our memory is tied to our senses. So like certain smells or sounds can draw you back to a place. So, that is the danger, or not the danger. That's the hard part about sci-fi, at least. If you're in a space shoot, like you're going to get recycled air. You could talk about what that smells like, but you're not going to necessarily smell the burnt ozone or whatever. So getting those sensory details becomes more creative, I think.
Yeah, you have to reach for it a little bit more and really get it makes the sensory input more intimate, because if you're going to get like the smell off of something, it's because you're really close.
Yes. All right. So you said you were a linguist. How many languages do you speak? I'm assuming based on your time, probably Arabic would be one.
That is the one I learned. So there's a big difference between how many have I learned and how many can I use.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. So as a child, I was I was an Army brat as well. My parents were both MPs. And so we moved to Panama and we moved to Germany, and I learned German. I was very fluent in German for a while, and that's all gone. I learned French and Spanish in school. That's all gone. And I learned Arabic, and Arabic's not all gone, but I haven't used it realistic, like in a real way, since like 2010. So, it's just not all there anymore.
I remember imshi, and I don't even remember what the word means, but we used to shout it when we were on TCPs. So
it means go, hurry up.
Yeah. And so I know, like, I took Spanish in middle school, and it was one of those things where they were testing, letting middle school kids start taking the high school level language classes, and they were so worried about us having good grades to make the program look good that they forgot to actually teach us anything.
Oh God!
So I got to Spanish 2 in high school, and I was like, I can't, like, I don't know what I should have learned the first week.
Right.
I remember they had the somebody from the district was sitting in, and I tried to say something about soup, and I ended up telling the district lady that I was pregnant. I remember everyone laughing, but that's about the extent. And
yeah,
then
I have a similar story. Early Arabic classes. So at the Defense Language Institute, which is in Monterey, California, we're taught by civilian contractors. And so, this is early classes. So I'm taking my dictionaries while the class is going on, and I have this thing I want to say. I don't remember what it was, right? But I had it. And so I used both my dictionaries, and I constructed this sentence. And then, I look up at the teacher and I say it. And she looks at me, she kind of tilts her head. And then I say it again, and she goes, "Oh, we do not say it like this." So I just picked up my dictionary, and I was just like, "Oh," I just threw it across the room. Everybody, not like painfully, but just tossed it. And everybody looks at me, and I'm like, "No, I'm good now. I'm fine."
It's one of those things where dialect matters, and some of that's even regional. But I mean, just think about the differences in the English language from the north to the south, and from the East Coast to the West Coast, and from America to UK to Australia. Like it makes sense.
Oh, 100%.
But so I got to Spanish 3, and we were expected to speak nothing but Spanish, and I couldn't roll my R's to save my life.
Oh no!
And so the Spanish teacher was like, "JR, you're going to fail this class. You really should just drop this language." I was like, "Well, I needed 3 years of a language to get the honors diploma." She says, or hear me out, 2 years of twice of 2 different languages. You could do the 2 for 2. And I'm like, okay. She says, try German. You just have to sound like you're angry and you want to spit on someone, and you can pronounce those words. And I'm like, dude, I'm there. I mean, my family's half German, so it makes sense that I could do those sounds. But
right,
yeah, I had to switch to German because I could not roll my R's. And German's so guttural. It was just a lot easier. I can't remember any of it because I don't use it on a regular basis.
Right. So yeah, that's the problem.
At one point in time, I was fluent in German. I don't know that it's the most useful language. I would say probably in the modern world, Spanish or Arabic or two of the, or maybe Chinese are some of the more useful languages.
But just on a personal development level, learning a new language well just changes the way your brain works anyway. Builds new connections and mental flexibility. Yeah.
And the same skills you learn to use, you use to learn languages, you also use when you're learning music too. So learning to read sheet music and stuff, all of it for what even languages helps your brain with math for some reason.
Yep.
The link is there. Which makes me think when they talk about, and they've done it in some of the sci-fi movies where they say math is the universal language. I wonder if music might not be, because that translates regardless of what their number structure is.
Sure.
So,
yeah, it's an interesting concept.
So obviously your experience in the military just in general kind of affects, because it's more life lived. But do you ever draw on people you knew in the military when you do your writing, like the characters?
No. No, I didn't know any of them well enough.
Okay.
Because I don't like two-dimensional characters, never have. And so the number of people from the military that I could draw into a book well enough, to take parts of them that matter, I could count on one hand. There are only a couple.
That's fair. You also probably, as a linguist, if you were in the field, you're going to be floating around between many units. So you probably didn't have the same kind of infantry experience where you're with the same guys all the time.
Well, that's true. But fortunately, I was actually stateside my entire term.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at Fort
Um,
Gordon, and they wanted to move me for my last year because they want you to be 3 years on station, but not move you if you have less than a year. When I hit 3 years on station, I had 362 days left, and so they were like, "So, do you want to re-enlist?" And I was like, "No, I don't. Thank you, though." So I just stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, you guys were critically short on the early war, at least on the language.
Yeah.
I remember when we'd go on raids and we'd pull documents, and for all we know, it was like Colonel so-and-so's grocery list, but it all looks the same. And so you'd be turning that in, and then who knows how long it took. By the time they sort through it, the actionable intelligence is probably already passed, because we were just critically unprepared linguistically for that.
Oh, 100%.
They were still training people to fight the Cold War, which is kind of cyclical in nature. From a human perspective, we always train for the last war, and we never tend to think ahead.
Teaching's the same way, unfortunately. We're always teaching for what we learned as opposed to what students need now.
Yeah, that came up. So my kid, well, my youngest is autistic, and I remember when he got his diagnosis, it was right as the DSM-4 was being retired and the DSM-5 came out.
Sure.
And they were telling me I remember it was that time because we had to pause to go in to get the results for them to read the new book and then come up with the new diagnostic codes and stuff. I mean, it was obvious that there were issues, but one of the things they were telling us is they had to redo the test because for young kids, it's like picture identification of like a phone and a car and a mailbox. They used the old blue mailboxes that used to be ubiquitous in cities.
Nobody knows what those are.
Nobody knew what they were because they don't see them anymore. And the same with the old phone. They had to go to cell phone to get the picture to work. And they didn't know what a stamped letter was because, I mean, who mails things anymore? And so some of the social cues that, we take for granted are just not there anymore. Right. I mean, if you think about how you hold your hand when you're mimicking on a phone, it's still like you've got the old cradle kind, right? Nobody has the cell phone. You should be holding the brick to your ear if you wanted to, right? That's more accurate.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel right.
It doesn't. I will say that kids these days never get the experience we do. When we're really angry with someone, you can just slam the phone down, and that's a very satisfying feeling. If you do that now, your phone will shatter, and you'll be up to $3,000 or whatever it is.
Well, hey, maybe it's teaching them anger control.
There you go.
I have to quietly turn my phone off.
Absolutely. Control your emotions is a good thing. So because you saw so much of the world and you got exposure to the military, both as an Army brat and then serving, does it change how you engage with content as a reader of like books, movies, and such?
So when I read things, so I'm definitely a little bit on the other side of the reading fence from where you are, because I read paragraphs at a time, not words.
Okay.
So my eyes, they don't follow the sentence. They land in the middle of a paragraph and absorb most of it, and then they jump to the next paragraph. So I read very fast, but the details of it don't matter very much. It all just kind of plays out in my head as an experience. So what bogs me down in entertainment is when you don't trust me to do that. So for instance, I tried to read Lord of the Rings as a teenager. I did read it later, and it's fantastic, and I absolutely love it before anybody goes and lynches me in the comments. It's great. But as a teenager, I could not get past Bilbo's party at the very beginning because it took so long. There was so much word count devoted to nothing actually happening. And I was just like, why? And I put it down, I've had similar issues with like Anne Rice books. I love Anne Rice. Her vampire works are great, but she'd go on describing the same forest for 10 pages. And so I'm just like, okay, where's the forest end? Okay, great. And then I'd move on because I just don't want to read about the forest for 10 pages.
I get that. I said I like a lot of detail. There are some details I will gloss over. Like I liked the Honor Harrington stuff, but when he started doing his math porn, like I just sort of glazed out and I just skim ahead.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you read the paragraph instead of the word.
Right.
Is that common with linguists? Is someone who's good with languages? Is that
I don't know. My wife doesn't do that. My wife she was also a cryptologic linguist. That's where we met.
Oh,
And
cool.
and she is a word connoisseur. Like, she is very slow about it, and she'll be like, but really? Is this really what you meant here? You know, especially when she's editing my stuff. I'm just like, does it get the idea across? Like, come on.
So your kids really can say your mother wear combat boots. And God, I'm showing my age because that movie with Stallone. But yeah, that's cool. So were you always, because, obviously you served in a modern military. So in theory, your experience would more closely probably translate to sci-fi as a setting or modern stuff than medieval, which is essentially fantasy for most people. Is there a reason you went the other direction?
So my favorite books have always been character, fast-paced, driven fantasy novels.
Okay.
So we're looking at, and some of them are really big, like David Eddings. I really love all of the fantasy, the Belgariad, the Malorian, the Elenium, all those series that he wrote. They're fantastic. I like Stephen King a lot. I've been reading since I was a year and a half old. So it's about what the story means, not the way, like the setting.
Okay.
And I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I still do, but I play Pathfinder more now. But, medieval Western setting tabletop role-playing games were kind of where I cut my teeth on storytelling. So that probably had an influence as well.
The first attempt at a story I did, we'd read Gilgamesh and Beowulf, and I'm like, I could do this. So I tried in 10th grade to write my own epic poem, which I really hope my mother didn't keep. I'm pretty sure that got
blackmail material now.
It is, if she can find it, but it's right up there with the pictures of me with a mullet in middle school. Like, I just hope they don't survive. Like, hey, okay, like MacGyver.
It was a different time. It was a different time.
And I had those MC Hammer parachute pants. I'm just saying, it was a different world, people.
My mom has pictures of me with one glove.
Oh, the Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Oh, there's that meme floating around because obviously when you're citing your sources, like certain times you could find the article that gives the exact what you wanted to say to prove your point. But if it's outdated compared to the newer research, obviously then you go with the newer research, right, unless you can justify it. And so a friend of mine's wife, one of the guys in my Army group, is his wife's a teacher. And she was teaching that to the kids just as a general rule. And so the kid with a straight face asked if they were allowed to cite this one source, and they referenced whatever it was because it was set in the late 1900s. It was a 1999 article. I'm like, ooh, that just hurts. Like that was, ooh, right in the chest.
Yeah. That's old now. That's old now.
Back was a simpler time. All we cared about was the internet crashing and the planes falling out of the sky.
Yeah, that's not happening anymore.
No, not at all. Okay, so before we get too deep in just chatting, I'm curious. Your experience as a linguist is not something we've talked about before. Like one of the authors who publishes regularly in my anthology is a linguist, but like he's just, I don't say just a reservist, but he's never actually deployed. He quickly went, the weekend warrior route, and he enlisted when the war on terror was mostly over. So his experience was a little different than ours. When you were doing your linguist stuff, the stakes were real, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that
my team got, we got which one was it? A Joint Services Commendation Medal for saving American lives. So yeah, we were involved in things.
My favorite with the awards is everyone assumes that they mean more than they do. And I'm like, no, sometimes the award just means you were in the right place with the right rank to 100%. Get it. I watched a guy pull one of the TCN drivers that we were escorting out of a burning vehicle under fire. So we wrote him up for a Silver Star. By the time it made it down the pipe to him in line, he was presented with an Army Achievement Medal, which is the one they give you for finishing boot camp with a V for Valor device. And so we had to tell him, I'm like, Private Snuffy, like you did great and mighty things, and I'm proud that you're getting recognized. And this V for Valor is not nothing, but carry the orders with you. Yeah, but carry the orders with you because people are going to accuse you of stolen valor because nobody gets a V for valor advice. Like, this is unheard of.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things where it's just only in the Army. There's a difference in a command that treats their people well and one that doesn't,
100%.
So, all right. So the next part of the introduction, dear listener, we're 20 minutes in, is how we found them. So you actually came to us through Jana Brown. I think you guys met at Superstars.
Okay.
I know you were one of the ones that signed up through the Google Docs she created. So I'm assuming that's where she met you.
100%.
And so we're glad she did because your books look amazing. But before we dive any deeper, we do have to ask you the religion question. So are you ready for this? All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
So if it comes down to a battle royale, then I'm going to go with Star Wars, and that's going to include all of them.
Okay.
I like all of them.
That's fair. I like a lot of the old, what they're calling them, I guess, legends now, but I liked a lot of the old books I grew up reading.
See, I never read those. So
when
people started talking about like the sequel trilogy betraying the character of Luke Skywalker and all this kind of stuff, I hadn't read any of those things, right? I never read Luke as that entity. And so I just looked at it as, yeah, he got beat down, he got beat up, and he took the coward's path, which people do, and he left, and there you go.
Yeah, I don't. I can
not to
see
start an argument.
No. I can see where people are disappointed with the movies, but I think part of it is because George Lucas never met an idea he didn't like, so he said yes to everybody. And
Sure.
We've kind of hit at this before, but like if it takes X number of days to get from point A to point B, and that's canon, and you have Luke and Leia over here on day one, you can't have them, X -1 days later on point B because there's just no way they could make it. The timeline doesn't match.
Sure, yeah.
And so because everybody wanted to write about the main characters, that meant that if you don't you needed someone to keep the reins on the lore, right? And he just didn't. He said yes to everything.
Yeah.
And so when Disney bought it, they kind of had to come to the crossroads of like how we want to handle this extra. Now, if it was me, I would have taken all of it and I just would have had the authors get together and build the timeline and then tweak their books and re-release at it. And so it's a win-win. You get to publish a bunch of content with new covers that you can sell again to a brave new audience. Right. I mean, they would have been flush, and you could have honored the old fans who would have been like, oh man, I can get this and it's canon. Now let me go buy that book too. I'll have 2 copies.
Sure.
But instead they just,
they
didn't care about the fans. They axed it. And I don't know. I think if you're going to work in an existing property, if you do that and you don't love the property, the readers, the fans, they'll know. And it's never going to be well received. Like if you're going to write in, any of those properties, you better be one of the biggest fans. It's the only way it works.
The sequel trilogy's main problem, and again, I really love those movies individually, but it's simply that the directors didn't have a plan going into the trilogy. Like,
but
there was no through line. That was the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the sequel one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm tracking now.
Yeah. So, you have the 2 different directors trying to fix each other's mistakes and take the story the way they wanted it to go. And I really loved The Last Jedi. I loved every one of those subversions. When Luke just tosses the lightsaber, I'm like, all right, I see it. And when Snoke gets cut in half, I'm like, cool. I didn't see that coming. That's great. All that kind of stuff. So it's Star Wars because Star Trek is the world I'd want to live in. Right.
Yeah, that's my problem with Star Trek. And I've liked the movies. Wrath of Khan was amazing. I even like the reboots. I understand from a logistical point of view, like 2 different entities own the various versions of the IP, and it makes them doing anything in that world difficult from a creative standpoint, which is the fans are gonna notice even if they don't know why, because not many fans care about IP law, right?
Right.
But I even like the reboot where they reshot it with the modern actors. Like I can accept them, but I wasn't as vested in Star Trek like I was in Star Wars. So for me, it was just, this is cool. I mean, I thought Q was annoying. The idea that humans would be so altruistic is they're going to do things just for the love of it and not because they're getting paid, and money, like that money is outlawed. Like, I mean, it went against human nature to me. It was a little too utopian.
Sure.
And you get anything utopian enough, it quickly is just a smiley face on a dystopia. If you've seen Demolition Man, where they talk about the mayor, he's like an evil Mr. Rogers, is how they describe the mayor. Like that resonates. The idea that if it's too happy, almost it becomes dystopian, because generally it's covering something up.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I enjoyed the movies. I'm told that the books, and I haven't read any of the books. I'm going to at some point. I'm told they added a lot more depth to it and nuance to the George Roddenberry's dream of it being utopian. I think they kind of flesh that out as the world develops. And that happens. Like the more you flesh out a world, the more of those details will come to light.
Sure. I've read a couple of Star Trek novels, some Spock ones, and the Q squared one, something like that.
Yeah.
And that one was really good. Like Q can be annoying, but getting like, you get to see him play 4-dimensional stratego, basically.
Yes.
The world around him, and that's not something that any other character's perspective can account for, just because he's that high up. So it's kind of cool.
And I liked Enterprise. I really liked, so a lot of times you when you go backwards in a franchise's timeline, they forget to backwards adjust the technology. And so everything's just too smooth the whole time. I like that the Enterprise was clunkier. It was more, squared and less smooth around the edges, both literally and physically with the setting. I liked that we had the guy from Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula, as the captain. All of it.
I mean, he's just perennially an excellent science fiction actor. He's great.
He is. And I even didn't mind the time travel on that one. Like Q annoyed me, but the one on Enterprise didn't bother me so much. So I don't know. Like there's a lot in Star Trek I like.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, who couldn't imagine the fun you'd have with the replicator for the food,
right?
And the holodeck.
I mean, see, it's like if you take them as they're stated, if you take authorial intent, I'd rather live in Star Trek, because then I'm not going to want for anything. We've solved those problems. Now we can just be the people we want to be. But the stories are better for Star Wars, because they're hero versus epic villain, fate of the universe.
It's space fantasy, space western. Yes. So you get all of everything you loved about Louis L'Amour, but with lightsabers.
Right. Which, lightsabers make most things better. So,
except they actually had a swordsmith. From a biophysical perspective, the balance on a lightsaber would be off from a sword. So when you swing it, there's actually more of a danger of overswinging and thus hurting yourself. Because now everyone's like, oh, well, they've got the Force, so they, you just negate reality. But from a biological space magic. But from a biological perspective, the balance of the weapon kind of translates that information to your body that it then interprets and allows you to adjust your movements.
Sure.
I think it's called kinesiology, the science of body motion.
Kinesiology,
the lightsaber just doesn't meet that requirement. And of course, some young private's gonna like look through it and like, what's this button do? And then blow their brain, slice their head off or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's what young soldiers
they don't
do.
Talk about that in the Jedi Temple. They're just like, yep. Where's Jimmy?
Darwinism in space.
Right.
Although I'm not normally like making the good guy the bad guy and vice versa. I tend to like the good versus evil, make that cleaner in fiction just because it's more fun, because the world is gray enough. But I've seen some compelling arguments where the Jedis were the bad guys.
Oh yeah, they screwed it up. But the Sith were also the bad guys.
Yes, but I mean, the Empire just wanted to keep the peace.
Well, yeah, but see, so this is keep the peace in the same way that Injustice Superman decided to keep the peace.
Yes,
it's by taking away everybody's ability to make choices.
Yes, I like the jokes where the Alderaan, the trains ran on, or all the trains ran on time, and unemployment was 0 or something. Like the memes that came out of some of it, like it's definitely
Right,
an
100%.
overreaction. But it was again, it was the Sith that did those things, not the Empire writ large. The
Sure,
average
sure.
stormtrooper was just trying to get paid and stop the violence.
No, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
that's so for me. The thing I liked about Star Wars wasn't the Luke, Leia, Han, all that. I liked reading about the everyday person in that world.
Right.
That tends to be where I gravitate to. So like Republic Commandos, Karen Travis's books. I liked those. Or you're just talking about the random Jedi fighter, or
Right.
X-wing fighters and all of that. Like to
Somebody
me, that
who's
was
not like shaking everything up, just like one of the
yeah,
cogs.
the people that are just living,
Yeah.
because that's more relatable. And that's one of the things I just noticed in fiction in general. Everyone likes to write the superhero, the super soldier who can do everything, but if you really are that well trained, like the deal with the Green Beret or the Rangers, like they don't tend to have to communicate as much or have as much personality because they're well-oiled machines. They're running on autopilot, and that's sometimes not as fun to write or read as the guy that's speaking when he probably should be shutting his dang mouth, and the interactions that leads to, right? Like,
sure, yeah. So that reminds me of something that I watched recently. So I watched this channel called Door Monster.
Okay.
And the guy Kyle, he did sort of a video essay inspired by Fallout, the show. And basically he came up with that for a good story, there's 2 axes, and they're both the same thing. It's just realism and absurdity, but one of them is the premise and the other one is the execution. So for a good story, you can do a good story any way you want, but the easiest way is to mix them. So you can have a realistic person in an absurd premise. And that's where you get your, regular guy, regular Joe, suddenly gets thrust into this international conspiracy. And, they're backpedaling the whole time, trying to figure out not die type of thing. Or you go with your absurd set or your absurd principle, which could be like super powerful vampires, and then you put them in a realistic setting that has to deal with that. So they're dealing with people interrupting them and their neighbors being nosy and stuff like that.
And if you're going to do the ridiculous, you have to do it with a straight face. You have to take it seriously.
Right. 100%.
I've done that, for example, with short stories. Well, I'll use like Denovia or Atropia, the fictional countries the U.S. made up for the military to plan invasions of, just a war game without, oh my God, they're planning to invade, insert random country. I'm like, no, we're invading made up countries instead. Right. And I've used those, but then I treat it with an absolute straight face. Like, no, that's a real country. What are you talking about? And it works. But if you get ridiculous and then you lean into the ridiculous and you don't try to make the ridiculous serious, it just comes off as farcical. Comes off as farcical. So I definitely can see that. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. So thanks to one of our sponsors, we are bringing this back. But what is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, that's a good one. When I was a kid, I was always a fan of Deinonychus.
Okay.
I used to have like the dinosaur poster books and just plastered dinosaurs up all over the place. But now I'm going to have to say Archaeopteryx. First bird.
Okay. That's an interesting one. Is there a reason you like them?
Because they were the first bird, because they fly or tried to, and that's sort of the breaking out from what you were to become what you want to be. And that's kind of the phase of my life that I'm trying to get to.
Okay. That's fair. And what was the first one? Deinonychus. I'm trying to spell it and it's so bad.
Deinonychus. So let me spell it. Deinonychus.
I got it. I hashtag it for the show notes. So if people are looking up dinosaurs, they find us.
Yeah.
Because we're cool.
Right.
Okay. That's a good answer. I always like the Stegosaurus and the
Mhm.
Triceratops just because they look cool.
They
And
do.
you know, they just want to be left alone. But if you don't leave them
They're
alone,
going to mess you up.
they're gonna mess you up. So okay. So the next one, because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades, I know I did them out of order, dear listener. But Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay. So this one's tough. Game of Thrones, I don't care about. I haven't watched it, and I read 3 pages. He's never going to finish it, so I'm not really all that eager to get invested. Wheel of Time is an amazingly epic storyline, but Robert Jordan got very self-indulgent towards parts of it, and long books would go by without anything significant happening. So the Chronicles of Narnia, Lewis really, writing wise, they don't compete. Lewis did it best. And I'm more drawn to the Narnia setting because it feels like you get that idea that you could go there, that maybe at the back of your wardrobe or your closet is a way there. And yeah, so that's my vote.
That's yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid reading those and being disappointed when my closet was just a closet.
Yeah.
But that's where, the bridge to Terabithia comes in, because it tells you your imagination can take you everywhere.
Yes.
That's one of those books where it's the trauma you have to pass on to the next generation, right up there with Where the Red Fern Grows.
100%. You have to.
I mean, if I
it's
suffer,
good for
you have to suffer.
And it's good for you.
Yes, well, you're a teacher, so you would probably, according to your website, I don't know if you still teach, but at least at one point in time. Okay. So we here at the Blasters and Blades podcast are civilized human beings. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Tea, 100%. Black with artificial sweeteners of whatever is around. Sucralose at home. But when I'm at a restaurant writing or whatever, whatever packets aren't white.
Okay. So did you suffer in the Army when you had the MREs only had the coffee?
I didn't drink it.
Wow. Okay. You were popular because you could give it away.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you always like that? Or is that just something that
I've never liked coffee. It's just I don't like the bitterness of it.
Okay.
And if I'm putting so much stuff into it to make it not bitter anymore, then why? And I'm just going to drink tea.
So were you always into tea, or did that something that came later?
I'm from Louisiana. I've always been into tea.
Sweet and ice, diabetes in a cup. I get you.
Yep.
So, okay. So before we play this commercial and we start talking about the series that brought us here, I have a question, because we've talked about a little bit about writing and your nerd journey. So all of us, if you are in the creative endeavors, or even if you just think about it, have a few IPs, franchises, worlds that you would stop everything to write in if someone gave you that call. So for you, what franchise would that be? If someone picked up the phone and they're like, "Hey, Jason, we want you to write in X world," would you do it?
Oh man. Okay. So first, give me anything in so the role-playing game Ars Magica, run by Atlas Games, recently updated to an open commons license. So if they were like a novel based on our stuff, 100% I'd do that. It's my favorite game. Other franchises, it's tough to say, mostly because I already write the things I want to read, so I don't think that there's a lot. Now, I'd say yes to a lot of things if somebody asked me, but I don't think there's anything that I'm begging for at this point,
Mostly you just incorporated what you like about those into your own books already?
Right.
So for me, I'm a huge Fallout fan. I've been playing with them since the beginning. So if they call me and be like, "Hey, JR, write us a Fallout book," I'm like, "Dude, send me the paperwork. I'm signing it. I don't even need to read the contract.
Don't care. Go.
Yeah, I'm done for that one. It's probably not one you're familiar with, but Primeval, the franchise, is Primeval and Primeval New World, and basically one set in UK and one set in Canada. And the idea is there are time anomalies, and that what we call cryptids are actually ancient creatures from like the dinosaur era that are crossing over this time anomaly. And this is secret organization, much like the X-Files, except for it's the institute that pushes these time anomalies back through to their timeline.
That's really cool. That's a cool
and
concept.
It's a cool concept. They actually stopped making it, not because it wasn't making money and it wasn't popular. It was just, in an era before green screen was everything. And so it was so expensive to make.
Right.
And so, I mean, it ended on a high note. I really dug it. So that would be another one I'd stop everything to write for.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I absolutely love that one. And I'm sure there are a few more that I could think of, but for me, those are the two big ones. I've gotten to write for Galaxy's Edge. I love that universe, and I got to write a book in it. So I'm done there. And I've worked with some of the other people. The fun one is I've written a short story for a video game, or excuse me, for an RPG company. And while it was a lot of fun, when you work with someone else's IP, though, man, you've got to be on your toes because all the little details matter. Right. So is Ars Magica, is that urban fantasy, or is it more like D&D world?
So here's the setting. Like, I could go all day on this, but I'll try not to. Base setting, vanilla setting, is 1220 AD Western Europe. But magic is real. God is definably real. The devil is definably real. There are dragons and fairies and magical beasts and all this kind of thing. And the characters are wizards. And you're not supposed, it's not like D&D wizards where they at least attempt to scale it. It's like, well, you and the fighters should be kind of similar. And no, that's not the conceit here. You're a freaking wizard. You bend reality. You do these things. The issue isn't how you do it, or isn't do you do it. It's, how are you going to accomplish it and why? And eventually, and they track everything by seasons, as opposed to like getting experience for fighting monsters or doing adventures. So your characters, it can become generational. Your characters live a long time, and then they teach another wizard, and then you can play as them.
Saga almost.
Right. Yes. And it's just very cool.
Nice. Yeah. The other franchise I would drop everything to write for is Halo, because that's another one I've got hundreds of hours of fond memory, and in Skyrim, obviously. Although Skyrim, most of what you like about Skyrim, you could just replicate in your own kind of. It's basically like Rome versus the Vikings with a little bit of exotic racism, so they don't like the various non-human races.
And the ultimate Gary Stu. He can do anything. Your Dragonborn can be everything if you want them to be. And
of course, the fun conceit is everybody gets lost in the sauce on the side quest, that by the time they go to the main quest, they're like, wait, this was supposed to be hard? I just one-shotted this troll over here. What are you talking about? Huh. But that's the one that my experience with gaming was coming up through like the RPG setting on the video game side. So the math is there, and you understand that the mechanics are happening. But if you're going to try to write lit RPG, like you don't know what it looks like under the hood. Could you like it's been a learning curve because I'm working on a lit RPG, and I wish you luck.
I wish you luck.
Well, luckily my co-writer is really a math number cruncher. Jana is on the Pathfinder side, so she has that skill set. Like I can write a combat scene, like I just write what we did, but it's definitely a different experience when you're video gaming it out.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have to deal with all that stuff.
Absolutely, math. What math? So
just take care of it.
Absolutely, just hit save, and we'll come back later. So, all right, we're gonna pause for a moment while we shamelessly show for man, then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about your dragon books.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Introducing The Shaman's Bones, Migratory Farmers Book 1 by Hunter K. Wallace. This fantasy features fierce animal gods, omens of the stars, and a quest to find a very special set of bones. When Yolanda is made an ambassador in her caravan of migratory farmers, it's a dream come true, until a trade in a village on the equator goes terribly wrong. The skies foretell trouble, the spirit animals are angry, and shadow monsters prowl the night. Worst of all, Yolanda is supposed to fix everything. To do so, she'll need the bones to summon the greatest spirit animal of all. Yolanda isn't alone. She has the help of a resentful young man whose life she has ruined, a gorgeous bone collector obsessed with corpses, a nanny turned sleuth, and a very attractive blasphemer who hates the spirits even more than she does. She'd rather be alone, or stealing glances at the broad-shouldered, brown-eyed blasphemer. No, she'd rather be alone. Maybe. Learn more about the shaman's bones and other works by Hunter K. Wallace at hunterkwallace.com.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude, dear listener, dear viewer at home. So, all right. Now that we've got you back, we are here to talk about the Dragon Monarch Tetralogy.
Correct.
That you have so graciously written. And while we talk about that, I am going to throw that up on the screen so we can look at this gorgeous cover. So, first off, before we dive into about the book, what would you rate the book? So if people are listening and saying, hey, is this appropriate for my kid? What age ranges is this series okay with?
Okay, so the series, starting with Dragon Princess here, the one you're showing is the 4th book. So it goes all the way through Dragon Princess, Dragon Queen, Dragon Exile, and Dragon Empress. So I would have read these as 7, 8, but I'm not typical. In Dragon Queen, there is one scene of attempted sexual assault that, it's not played for laughs. I take it very seriously, but it's where the story went. And then in Dragon Empress, there are a couple of semi-descriptive love scenes. Okay. So I would say, obviously you have to rate it based off of the maturity of your child, your reader, as to how well they can handle those things and what you want to talk to them about as the parent of a young reader. But the language is not difficult. The content is not for children. Like, it's not made for children, if that helps.
It does. So you've got the evocative covers. Mm-hmm. Sorry if they didn't blow up very well, but you've almost got a paint setting.
Oh, these are painted. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, they are. They're actually, so that was intentional.
Yeah. So I commissioned James T. Johnson. Cut that out. I'm sorry. But I commissioned James T. Johnson, who's a former winner of the Illustrators of the Future contest, and a very close family friend, to paint oils. These are oil paintings on canvas that we digitized and then, slightly manipulated to put the graphic and the words and stuff like that. But I have all 4 paintings and they hang in my house. So
nice. Yeah,
it's great. And I'm overly pleased with them. I think they're absolutely fantastic.
It definitely has a vibe to the covers of the 80s and 90s. Not quite the psychedelics of the 70s, but as far as the style.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's when he won. And that's a lot of the inspiration that he took, like the Conan the Barbarian covers and things like that.
I can see it. So is the art that is, you said you have it in your house. Did you get it without the cover wraparound, or do you have it as the book cover hung?
No, it's just the original oil painting before we do anything.
So is the oil painting just the front, or does the oil painting do the wraparound for the wide?
So the oil paintings are generally a little bit bigger. They have a little bit more content than just the front. My wife has to trim it down to make sure that it fits the template, and
So sometimes people will they'll just get the front cover and then the back will be black, and then you'll just put the.
So what we usually do is we just take the picture again.
Okay.
But we focus in on a different part of it and change the layering and all that kind of stuff. So
you see that again?
Yeah. So we've got the dragon here and all that just kind of behind the text. So
okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I do like the art. I like the effect on the eyes where it looks like she's blind.
She is.
Well, then you got your goal across.
Yeah,
So what
she lost them as a baby.
Okay. So what was the inspiration for this universe that became the tetralogy?
So whenever I write something, I try to write something new and different. I try to stretch my skill set a little bit. And in this one, I said, what if my protagonist was blind? And so I couldn't write most of my scenes with visual input. And yet I had to keep the reader engaged. And so Amalia is the person that came out of that thought.
Okay. And so you started with the character then?
I always start my novels with protagonist, antagonist, and what is the centralized conflict. And that's all I know going in.
Okay. Now, in this one, are the dragons in this world friendly, or are they monsters that, St. George is going to have to go fight sometime?
No. So the dragons in this universe are sentient creatures who have been the victims of a misrepresentation campaign, disinformation. But they're divided by color into different regions of the world. And so Amalia's region, the high kingdom that she's to inherit, they waged a huge war against their dragons and think that they've extinguished them. But in other lands, which are across the Great Seas, they have a different relationship with the clans of dragons that inhabit their areas.
Okay. So is there the story with the dragons obviously happened before this tetralogy exists. Do you think at some point you're going to tell those dragon wars?
Oh dear. That's not a terrible idea. It would probably be like, I can't see myself doing that in a series of novels simply because it's awful. Like it's all based on lies where people are being deceived, and people and the dragons who never wanted any of that are just being butchered and attacked like in force, because the only way you're going to beat a dragon in this world is if you've got lots of people, So I don't know that I want to write them losing like that, because that's awful to me.
That's fair.
But a short story, like a prequel short story or something set in that time period, that could be interesting. I just don't know that I'd want to invest in books worth of that.
Do you expect to come back to this world at some point in time?
There is definitely possibility for like a generational jump, after Empress happens and we see what's happened to the whole world and the main characters, and then to have something else occur. Those seeds exist. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet, but it's definitely on the docket as a possibility.
Okay, so what can you tell us about the main character, aside from the fact that obviously you mentioned she's blind?
She is. High Princess, starting at the beginning, Amalia Therauld she's the only heir to this High Kingdom of Etheria. The High Kingdom is sort of like an empire would be in medieval Europe, where it has dominion over smaller kingdoms. And but she's blind, obviously. And so her father has made sure that she's developed and learned all the skills she'll need to be an effective ruler when the time comes. So he had created an entire like a touch-based language, like we have Braille, so that she could read, and made sure she was taught that. She learns elements of state. She learns how to fight. And the thing is, which we don't know early on, is that her mother was actually a transformed dragon. And so, so that gives her, abilities she's not really aware that she has at first, because she's not aware of it. But that's actually what happened when she was born. Her father saw her eyes, and her eyes looked draconic. right? And so he threw her into the fire thinking she was some sort of demon child. And her mother freaked out, turned back into her dragon form, raised the whole, just destroyed the castle. But Amalia survived. And so he said, okay, he didn't want to hurt her. It was a freak out, right? But he raised her in ignorance of that. Hid that from her.
Okay. Where was the mother when this assault was happening?
Well, she had just given birth. So he comes in to see his newborn daughter. He picks her up, and then he sees that her eyes look like dragon eyes, which, freaks him out. He yells at her, and then he throws the baby in the hearth fire. And that's what set her off, the mother off. And she turned into this massive dragon and, tried to kill him and then flew away.
Okay. That's an interesting start to a story. Does the mother come back? And obviously we don't want spoilers, but does she come back into the story at some point?
We do encounter her. Yes.
Now, do you go into why she became human at one point?
To an extent, it's so elder dragons have that ability to where they can shape change into anything, basically any living being they want to. And she to mend the rift between humans and dragons, through understanding them and trying to get them to understand each other.
Okay. Clearly that didn't work out how she intended.
Sure didn't, but people are dumb sometimes, so
they indeed they are. So obviously you've got dragons. Does magic exist in this world?
This is a comparatively low magic world. We do have divinities, we have various gods, but their role is comparatively non-interventionist. And the only magic that people are aware of has to do with dragons. So there are legends of people selling their souls to dragons or giving up something for draconic sorcery. And people who are descended from dragons and have that blood in them can use certain elemental powers. But, the Kingdom of Etheria is not very familiar with that because as far as they know, they drove their dragons out generations ago. So they aren't familiar with that.
Okay. How have readers responded to your take on the dragons in the way that you have? It's not something I've heard a lot it done this way before.
So they've all been very appreciative that the dragons aren't monsters because that's reductive and not super fun. And they enjoy the dynamics that I create between the draconic characters and the human characters. I can say that.
Okay. Are there any other mystical creatures besides dragons, fairies, gnomes, trolls, anything like that?
No, them and gods.
I mean, having a god walking around is pretty big, but
yeah, it happens a couple times, but again, they are supposed to not intervene. Supposed to.
Now, is it because they choose not to or they aren't capable?
So my view of these gods is that they have a role to play and that they cannot step out of that role because they are not humans.
Okay.
Humans can do what they want. Gods can do what they want within their own boundaries. So one of the gods that we meet is the goddess of secrets. And so she's just completely incapable of giving anyone a straight answer about anything. She can't do it, even if she wants to. But she doesn't want to because she's the goddess of secrets. That's who she is.
So was your interest, because you mentioned earlier that you were interested in Star Trek, that you enjoyed that world, was the prime directive that TNG was all about, which of course, obviously they never followed, but was that idea, that non-interventionist approach, was that something that inspired it, or did this come from your gaming experience?
No, I wasn't thinking about Star Trek when I wrote this at all. I think that it mostly came about because of the conflicts that the characters were dealing with.
Okay.
So again, I only write knowing my starting characters and what the conflict is. I have no idea how it's going to play out. I don't know what the subplots are as we go forward. And so I learn the rules of my world as the world builds itself, as the characters need to understand it, which is great because it keeps it very clean, very consistent, because it all has to work. And so it works.
So I'm guessing you do not plan this out. You kind of let the story inspire you as you go then?
100%.
Okay. So obviously, you know, the main character is the blind princess. Well, is a emperor in training still a princess, or is there something
so she does inherit the throne in Dragon Queen, driven out of the kingdom in Dragon Exile, and then she comes home in Dragon Empress.
Okay. So, you know, the running joke is I didn't have to learn about monarchy because the revolution made it so I didn't have to care.
Right.
But I know a lot of fantasy readers love to go to monarchical systems because it seems exotic to us Yanks.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I know like the children of a king and queen are a prince and princess. Is that true for an emperor? Is this different titles for him? I have no idea.
So there actually is, unless you've given them a title.
Okay.
Like you like if you have a kid and they're like 15 years old and you're like, you know what, you're the king of Hungary now, you know, because you're the Holy Roman Emperor, and so you get to decide that. Then they're, but before that, they're still princes and princesses, and
Okay.
your heir apparent would, some systems, be the crown prince or crown princess. Like that can happen, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a great thing about sci-fi. I don't have to worry about any of that.
You just make it up, but you can make it up in fantasy too.
You can. You got to make it just close enough to what people are used to that they'll track though.
Right.
So obviously, this story is the saga of your main character, and you've talked about her. Were there any secondary characters that you especially liked in this series?
Oh, 100%. So we have her weapons teacher / knight captain, Sir Destrick, who is disparagingly called Rusty by the huntsman who's introduced in the first book. He is enamored with her at the beginning, and she has a difficulty accepting this because she can't see people's faces. So that makes it really hard to figure out what they're actually thinking when they say stuff. So he lets it slip that he's been, enamored with her for a long time. And she goes through this whole spiral process of, yeah, really, maybe, definitely not type thing. He was a lot of fun to write because he's just like overall a good person, a human, but a good person. And I like that. We have
Why'd
her
they call him Rusty?
What's that?
Why'd they call him Rusty?
Because he wears heavy armor.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe because he was old, like, kind of a joke about his age.
He's not old. No, he's about her age.
Okay.
A little older, And then we have her dragon sister, Gloriana, who's just a delight. She's sardonic. She's sarcastic. And she doesn't trust people at first, which, is totally understandable.
Her younger sister, presumably?
Yes. But her sister is fully a dragon.
Now, I'm assuming they would have different fathers.
Yeah.
In some worlds, dragons are sort of asexual. They lay eggs and, that's that.
Yeah, no, they mate in this world.
Cool. So does the sister play a role in this story, or is she more of just set dressing?
She's right there.
Oh, that's her in the cover. Okay.
Yep.
What about the bad guy? Obviously, you've got to have protagonists for a story to go forward.
Well, I can't give away too much about the bad guy because in the first book, so we introduce to one of the main antagonists very early, but we don't know it. We don't find out about that until the second book. in the first book, the main conflict is her figuring out that she's been lied to and what she does in response to finding this out.
Okay. So obviously we want people to read the book, so no spoilers. Yeah. We intentionally
trying to keep it light. Trying to keep it light.
No, I understand. So for those that tend to, like I do, listen with our ears, read with our ears, is this available in audiobook at the moment?
The first two are. The third one is I'm reviewing it now, and then I need to pay the producer. And then after that, the fourth one will be like once I get the beta reads done and finish editing it entirely, then that one will go up too. So yeah.
So the fourth book is not published yet? I didn't catch that.
No, it's up for pre-order right now.
Okay. And is this written in first person or third person as far as?
Third person, 100%.
Okay.
I can read first person. I'm not very good at writing it.
It takes some like mind swapping. I can do both, but I don't even have a preference at this point. I think both have value depending on the kind of story you want to tell.
Absolutely.
I like being able to hop between characters' heads and POVs, and you can't really do that as well in first person.
Nope.
So it's definitely kind of like a storytelling, like with the horse blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that there's plenty of room for that in an action story. But
anyway. It can be great. Yeah.
So this is third person. Is it told exclusively from her point of view, or do you flip between some of the other characters too?
We absolutely flip between some of the characters, especially Destrick. Because he's with her a lot. We get to see some of the villains' perspectives as they're going along their plans, where she's not aware of it, stuff like that.
So obviously it's a fight story. Well, it's an action story in medieval times, so there's going to be sword fighting and such.
Yes.
What kind of preparation to get those scenes did you do? Did you just like watch some of the YouTube type videos, read historical accounts, watch some of the HEMA guys go, historical European martial arts? Like what preparation did you do to get the blocking of a sword fight correct?
Well, fortunately, so the way I write is I try to keep it very inside the person's experience. So I'm not trying to describe the entire fight all at once, right? I'm not trying to show where everybody is all the time, because most of the time the character doesn't know that, right? They're dealing with their immediate threat before something else happens. Also, since Amalia can't see, she has a very different fighting style than most people would consider like traditional, right? And it also relies a lot on her superior physical characteristics.
Okay.
So because she's half dragon, you try to block one of her attacks and she's not holding back, you will not successfully do that, right? She's much stronger than you are. But no, I really, my research or how to write fight scenes mostly comes from the types of scenes I enjoy reading and from movies. I really like to evoke that immediate presence in a movie. I like to say that my writing goes at the speed of plot, where, we are always working towards what's happening, whether, campfire scenes.
Absolutely.
Right. Where you spend 20 pages where everybody's just shooting the stuff and just chilling out. My characters never seem to be able to do that because they're always too busy.
There's room for all of it, although there's
100%.
There's more of a preference now for what they call slice of life or cozy stories, which is where the stakes are just a lot lower.
Right.
Not to say they're not compelling reads. I've read some of them; they are, but instead of saving the world, it's just like we're going to save this one castle instead. The rest of the world themselves. And like I said, it's just the kind of story you want to tell. It also depends on how tight of an arc you want. Are you trying to tell a Brandon Sanderson story or a somebody else who writes shorter in fantasy? I don't know, David Eddings or whatever.
Me. I don't write long, sprawly stories. It's very focused on the characters, but the characters care about the stakes. So, like, they don't take vacations from the story.
So, you don't have those, sitcom jokes where every season you've got at least one episode where they go to Disney World. None of that happening for you.
No.
No musical episodes, thank goodness. So the obviously she's blind, but you show her in all the pictures with a sword. So
Yes.
How do you compensate for that in her sword fighting? Is it the other senses she gets from the dragon side?
Yeah. So she's been training for, over a decade to develop her ability to handle herself on the battlefield. One thing that I worked very hard to do is show that a lot of her prowess is based off of familiarity with things.
Okay.
So if she's in a place she knows, she walks around very confidently. She knows where everything is. She can reach out and find the things very quickly. She also has a dog, and her dog is very helpful. Pushing her away if she's about to run into stuff. In a fight, if she's fighting one-on-one and there's not a lot of distractions, then it's like Daredevil. She's pretty much got it, right? She knows where you are. She can hear you moving around. She can hear you breathing. If there's multiple opponents and there's distractions and noise, then she's going to be more cautious and she's going to be more defensive until she gets an opportunity where she knows she can take a shot and then try to take one of them out, and then proceed on.
Well, the reason I asked is because there is poor listeners, they've heard this before. I am colorblind. So one of the gifts that comes with that is I see textures better than most people. And so, there is this belief that if you're truly born blind, although she was made to be blind, sort of different, but it happened young enough. I don't know that there's a difference. It's a distinction without difference, I guess, in this case.
Right.
But presumably she'd be her body would compensate, right, at some level.
Well, that's the idea.
Throw in dragon body part, the dragon blood and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe she can, echolocate, or she can sense the heat or thermal or whatever.
Right.
So you factor that kind of stuff in to give her. Then if you do that, just imagine what she could have been without that, with the without the blindness.
100%.
So did you, when you wrote the scenes, how did you factor in what that might feel like to know? Because at some point in time, she's going to find out Daddy's the one who blinded her, right?
She does.
How did you prepare to get that scene just right? Because that level of betrayal is, for most of us, it's unfathomable.
I didn't. I wrote it. It sounds like a dumb answer, but that's the way it is. I'm writing. She finds out, and I'm like, oh dear, okay, and I keep writing. Because that's how it happens. It's playing out in my head as I'm typing it out.
So you see a movie in your head, and you just describe the movie. Is essentially how it's working for you.
Yes,
that fits with how you describe your reading as well.
Yeah.
Does that make editing your? Go ahead.
No, you first.
I would say, does that make editing yourself more difficult?
The biggest thing I have to do when I edit is I have to add more things.
Oh, I do that too. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So my wife, who is my first reader for basically all my stuff and who reads every word of everything, is always like, I'm not here with them right now. I need this. I need to understand why they're doing this, stuff like that. And it's really helpful. But I usually end up adding 8,000 to 10,000 words to a book, because what I've written is the plot forward version. All the stuff happened, and now it's like, okay, now put us there.
Yeah. Okay. And you were going to say?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. You just had the good question. Yeah.
Is this mostly taking part in the same kingdom, or do you explore the broader world?
They leave their kingdom. So there are multiple sub-kingdoms inside of the high kingdom of Etheria. So they visit a couple of the sub-kingdoms during the first book. The second book is mostly in her lands until they have to flee, which takes up the third book, and then they're in the outer kingdoms until they come home.
Does any of this take place over the water, or is it more all land-based?
They have to travel over the ocean to get to the outer kingdoms. So we definitely have some things on the boat, and then we have things coming back when they're flying on dragons.
Do you have water dragons then? If you've got the ocean segment, are there any of the aquatic dragons?
There are no dragons endemic to water that we encounter. There could be. They don't encounter any of those during the story. And my excuse for that, if I decide later that there are, is simply that the ocean's really big and they weren't around here.
Yeah. Or they just knew to stay away.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with all the people and their sea traffic and whatnot.
Or was the dragon with her sister?
Yep.
In human form or dragon form?
Dragon form. At the time, she wasn't mature enough to take a human form.
Well, then there's your explanation. The dragon stayed away because there was a different kind of dragon.
They're like, we don't want any of that smoke. We're good.
Now, speaking of smoke, do your dragons breathe fire?
The red ones do.
So presumably the other colors breathe other things?
Yes. The white ones breathe ice. The black ones breathe sort of a poisonous smog.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you were a gamer. Did you war game any of this out in actual gaming sessions with your crew?
No.
That would be probably a fun one. Although gamers can be if you've ever been a dungeon master, you know this. Your table can be so unpredictable. It's like
it's not a reliable way to get
no,
the
but
information.
I know people who have done it. I know people who have done it.
Record of Lotus War was based off of a D&D campaign. It's absolutely fantastic. But not this.
All right. So obviously you've got the 4 books. When do you think you said you potentially books later on after this tetralogy ends? If you're editing book 4 in print and book 3 in audiobook, when do you foresee, are you going to go to something else next and then come back? Or are you going to roll straight into the next?
Well, I'm always doing something. So right now I have a Poseidon-oriented novel in editing. Is it in this world? Sorry?
Is it in this world that the dragon?
No, it's ancient Greece.
Okay.
Or ancient, that time period. It's just there are no novels where Poseidon's the protagonist. Like there's lots where he's side character, but not the protagonist. So I wrote one. I have a paladin, an old paladin novel in editing that not in editing. I'm submitting it places to see if anybody wants it. And I have a Phoenix novel that I'm writing that's an urban fantasy. So I have lots of things that I'm doing. And I'm writing, right now I'm typing up a science fiction political thriller set on Venus. So, yeah.
Cool.
Lots of projects. So when will this happen? When I get to
it. That's fair.
When that's the next thing that comes up and I'm like, I have to write this now.
Sometimes you got to let the dust settle in a world before you come back to it.
Yes. Especially if you're going to do like a generational jump, which is what I would plan to do.
Obviously, book 1 and 2 is out in print and audio. Book 3 is out in print. Yes. Have the fan reactions ever surprised you? Like I know, and I'll give you as example, in one of my series, what I thought was a throwaway character was like a bit villain, was fan favorited enough that I, when I wrote a sequel, it had to include him because in the end, it was supposed to be just like a one-liner kind of guy, like a side, and then fans liked it so much you had to just make that more of a thing. Has that happened and surprised you with any of the fan reactions?
Not with this series. Mostly it's been confirmation that I did what I was trying to do with characters or with certain situations.
Okay.
Where I'm like, did this happen? And they're like, oh yeah, I felt that. And I was like, yes, that's what I wanted.
Okay. Is there anything we didn't talk about of the Dragon Monarch series that you think we should make sure the reader knows?
Right now, the ebook for the first novel is on sale for 99 cents in preparation for the launch of book 4 in July.
So this episode how long is that sale lasting?
Until July 15th.
So yeah, this will air on the 14th. So you'll have the rest of today to get that sale, dear listener, and I'll get with you about posting that sale in the Facebook group in advance of that, so we can give them time to take advantage of this.
Which 15th is this going live at?
Next month.
So the sale's till July 15th. So we've got lots of time.
Okay. Yeah. So we're good.
Yeah.
Math, it's hard. What can I say? Okay, so the book's on sale. So check it out. You got what's 99 cents. You got nothing to lose. That's not even a small coffee anymore.
Right. Not even Dunkin' Donuts.
So there's a funny joke going on, speaking of coffee, where it's one of the comedians talk about how because the economy is so bad right now, the young kids these days are developing what they call the home cafe, and they think they're inventing the wheel because they're making their own coffee. And I'm like, what's next? They're going to discover the stove.
Home restaurants. I love that.
Oh, anyway, at least our minds were on the same place because at the same time we were right there. All right, Absolutely. So this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, and they really do matter. So those reviews help. And if you want to do a book review over there on Instagram, on the TikToks, on the Facebooks, on the YouTubes, whatever, all of it's good. Leave a review on Amazon too. Now, are these Amazon exclusive with the Kindle?
No, I go wide. You can.
Okay.
The print books are Amazon for now. I'm looking for other print platforms as well. But the ebooks are basically everywhere.
Good. Cool. Yeah. So wherever you buy them, you can leave reviews. They really do make a difference. So do your part, people. It really does help.
And we like reading them. Like we really do.
Some authors do. Mostly I tell people the reviews are for other readers to know what they're getting.
No, they absolutely are.
I have seen
for me, but I like them.
Yeah, I have seen some of the reviews that have attempted to be bad reviews, and they sold me the book like way too much cussing with these Space Marines, and I'm like, dude, you just sold the book to me. Thank you very much.
It's that meme. I already said yes. You don't have to sell it to me again.
Right. My favorite review was one of mine where it unfortunately at one point in time Amazon was yeeting a bunch of the reviews, but it was like, this is what happens when you let a 12-year-old with ADHD write gun porn, and I'm like, can I put that on a T-shirt? I'm like, I like this. This is supposed to be a slam, but I'm like, dude, like, can I quote?
I'll take that. So not in this series, but in my urban fantasy series, the first one I published, I have a review that says it's like a cross between Supernatural, the TV show, and Pokemon.
Okay.
And I'm like, I see it, I love it, and I'm going to tell everybody that.
You just gave me my elevator pitch,
right?
Okay. Now, is the audiobook narration single narrator, or are you following the trend where sometimes you have the more than one narrator?
No, it's single narrator. And she's excellent. She does a really great job.
Yeah, it would almost have to be a female narrator with the female main character.
Yes.
So what breadth of accents are we getting from these since you're proofing your own?
So she mostly sticks to... So she uses her variety of sort of vaguely European accents. So, right. A little bit kind of like French, a little like stuff like that. When we meet people who aren't from Etheria, because they're foreign to Amalia. But Amalia is the generic, her voice accent,
Yeah. It's one of those things where you don't think you have an accent, everyone else does.
Right.
So it tracks that you wouldn't need to add an accent unless you're going for effect.
Right.
Although you could add accents and it does sometimes make it. I've seen some of that mods where like supposedly they rewrote the entire first book of the Harry Potter series in the Scottish brogue, the whole text. Something like that. Or I've seen them do some of the lectures. They'll add like German accents to it when you have the dictator in various worlds. Like those kinds of add-ons can be humorous, but it's sure. Because as a default, like we don't think we have accents everyone else does.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay.
And
is there anything else before we wrap up, or are you ready to tell people how they can stalk you on the internet? I mean, follow you.
No, I've had a great time. Thank you so much for having me. So you can find me on X, which I'm forced to call it now for probably legal reasons. You can find me on my newsletter, which the link to that I believe will be below. I have a Facebook group, The Keepers of the Keys, and that is the easiest place to contact me directly. if you want to, or you can check out my website, which has links to all of my books.
Okay, and I'll have all of that in the show notes. I'll have to grab the Keeper to the Keys from you.
Sure.
And you can follow us, a dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans to Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section. This is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, people, and then we'll point and laugh. But seriously, these episodes aren't free to produce, and we appreciate your patronage. So if you donate directly, that goes to cover the overhead. If you use the link and get your coffee with 10% off, we get a little bit of a kickback. That also helps. If you can't do that, share the episodes. That matters too. And if you need international free shipping for the coffee brand coffee, you can get it on Amazon. Just put in the review, the Blasters and Blades podcast sent you. And maybe they'll pay us, since we don't get money for this, they'll pay us in coffee. That's the one thing about being a coffee, like Pimpin' Out Coffee is one of our sponsors. I can see on the paywall like where the orders are coming from. Just generically, it'll be like the first name and the last initial for the last one. And disproportionately high number of those are my co-hosts and I buying our own product. And like, we forgot the number one rule of drug dealing: don't buy your own supply. Don't use your own supply. But we get a discount too, so I guess it's a win-win.
You could spin it that way.
That's how I tell myself I'm giving money back to myself with a lot of middlemen. I don't know.
Yes.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thanks for coming on, Jason. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to have you back.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
And with that, we're going to hit the end button. Don't